In today's video, we're looking at the 10 predictions of technology that couldn't have been more wrong. In at number 10, it's the telephone. Here's a quote from a Western Union internal memo in 1876. "This telephone has too many shortcomings to be seriously considered as a means of communication." Whether this was belief or wishful thinking on the part of Western Union, they didn't get the memo. Instead, they wrote the one above when a broke Alexander Graham Bell, inventor of the first successful telephone, offered to sell his patent to Western Union for $100,000. Not only did they turn him down, company officials made the additional following comments. "We do not see that this device will ever be capable of sending recognizable speech over a distance of several miles. Hubbard and Bell want to install one of their telephone devices in every city. The idea is idiotic on the face of it. Furthermore, why would any person want to use this ungainly and impractical device when he can send a messenger to the telegraph office and have a clear written message sent to any large city in the United States? This device is hardly more than a toy and of no use to us." In the 1870s, both Elisha Gray and Alexander Graham Bell designed devices that could transmit speech electronically, and both rushed to the patent office within hours of each other. Bell was faster, but it took the courts to decide the real inventor: Bell. Number 9. The automobile. The horse is here to stay, but the automobile is only a novelty, a fad. One can only imagine the number of cleanup jobs that would be available in New York alone had this prediction by the president of Michigan Savings Bank come true. The advice was given to Henry Ford's lawyer, Horace Rackham, to discourage him from investing in the Ford Motor Company in 1903. Rackham decided to ignore the warning and invested $5,000 in Ford stock. He later sold the stock for $12.5 million. In 2012, there were over 84 million motor vehicles produced worldwide. Approximately 259 million vehicles are in use in the United States, and in 2007, it was estimated that 802 million cars and light trucks were on the road. Number 8. My kingdom for a horse? Neighs to railroads. Most of us have heard the old objections to motorized vehicles replacing the horse. The most hilarious of these involved parliamentary opposition to building a railway in England in 1825 between Liverpool and Manchester. Pamphlets and newspapers were wildly inane and insane over the prospect. The hazards had been described as follows. The railway would prevent cows from grazing and hens from laying. The poisoned air from the locomotives would kill birds and render the preservation of pheasants and foxes no longer possible. Nearby houses would be burned to a crisp from the engine chimneys. Clouds of smoke would pollute England. Horses would die out as who would make a profit from oats and hay. Travelling by road would be highly dangerous and country inns would be ruined. Don't ask me why. Boilers would burst and blow passengers to atoms. But there was always this consolation to wind up with: that the weight of the locomotive would completely prevent its moving, and that railways, even if made, could never be worked by steam power. Essentially, the railroad would not only be a blight, but turn England into Hiroshima. Guess what? It didn't happen. Number 7. Flying machines, radios, and X-rays. Heavier-than-air flying machines are impossible. Radio has no future. X-rays are a hoax. These wrong predictions were made by one of the greatest physicists of his time, William Thomson, Lord Kelvin, 1824 to 1907. The Irish genius patented 70 inventions starting at age 16. In addition to discovering the Joule-Thomson cooling effect, he invented the mirror galvanometer, used in the first transatlantic telephone cable linking Ireland with Canada, almost risking his life while supervising the laying of the cables. In 1870, he worked in navigation, designing an improvised compass, which in 1882 was adopted by the British Navy. It is ironic that the man who was knighted in 1886, among many other honors, including the Kelvin scale, had no faith in flying machines, radios, or X-rays, saying in the 1900 address to physicists at the British Association for the Advancement of Science, "There is nothing new to be discovered in physics now. All that remains is more and more precise measurement." One can only wonder how it'd feel knowing there's a crater Thompson on the moon. Number 6. Television. Television won't be able to hold any market it captures after the first 6 months. People will soon get tired of staring at a plywood box every night. This was said by none other than film mogul Darrell F. Zanuck in 1946. He wasn't alone. In 1939, the New York Times wrote, "The problem of TV was that people had to glue their eyes to a screen, and the average American wouldn't have time for that." They were right. People needed extra time. According to a 2010 Nielsen study, the typical American glues their eyes to the screen 5 hours a day. Where was Marshall McLuhan when the Times needed him? There are more and more sets in each home to avoid those nasty fights when mum wants to see a Britcom, dad wants to watch the ball game, and the children are hooked on Survivor. Number 5. Nuke it. There's not the slightest indication that nuclear energy will ever be obtainable. It would mean that the atom would have to be shattered at will. This quote appeared in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette on December 29, 1934, and came from, of all people, Albert Einstein, while in the same year, Enrico Fermi discovered that if uranium is bombarded with neutrons, the uranium atoms will release energy by splitting up into lighter elements. Of course, a mere 5 years later, scientists had a better handle on nuclear fission, realizing that a chain reaction, once started, would increase, causing a massive explosion. By 1942, the chain reaction was created experimentally. Allegedly, Fleet Admiral Leahy told President Truman, "This is the biggest fool thing we've ever done. The bomb will never go off, and I speak as an expert on explosives." It did. The first atomic bomb used in war exploded over Hiroshima on the 6th of August 1945. But nuclear power turned out to be both a curse and a blessing. In 1954, the Soviet Union became the first country to use this awesome discovery to supply electricity from its Obninsk nuclear power plant. Number 4. Outer space. A rocket will never be able to leave the Earth's atmosphere. The New York Times in 1936. Was the Grey Lady's face red when, in January of 1946, a mere 10 years later, the US started research into outer space? On March the 22nd, at White Sands Proving Grounds, the first American-built rocket, WAC, was launched, reaching an altitude of 50 meters, becoming the first American rocket to leave the Earth's atmosphere. Between 1969 and 1972, not only did we leave our atmosphere, but during the 6 manned Apollo missions, 1969 and 1972, 12 American astronauts reached the moon. The first 2 men to set foot on the moon were Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin on the 20th of July, 1969. Oh, and by the way, the Times finally offered a retraction on the 17th of July, 1969, as Apollo 11 was on its way. Number 3. Computers. I think there is a world market for maybe 5 computers. Thomas Watson, chairman of IBM in 1943. Need we say more? Back in the day, many did. Ken Olsen, founder of the Digital Equipment Corp, said, "There is no reason for any individual to have a computer in his home." His remarks were part of his address in Boston to the World Future Society in 1977 and widely quoted. Olsen, however, has contended that the remark was taken out of context, explaining he wasn't talking about personal computers, but a master computer system that would control the home. Meanwhile, since the mid-1970s, over 1 billion personal computers have been purchased worldwide. Number 2. The Internet. The Internet will soon go spectacularly supernova and in 1996 catastrophically collapse. This embarrassing statement was made by the brilliant Robert Metcalfe in a 1995 issue of InfoWorld. In fact, he promised to eat his words if he was wrong. The award-winning Dr. Metcalfe, with a PhD from Harvard who co-invented the Ethernet, founded the 3Com digital electronics company, and as of January 2006 became a general partner of Polaris Venture Partners. He later made good on his 1995 promise. During his keynote speech at the 6th International World Wide Web Conference in 1997, armed with a handy blender, he ingested the magazine page containing the quote. Number 1. Remote shopping. Remote shopping, while entirely feasible, will flop because women like to get out of the house, like to handle merchandise, like to be able to change their minds. That's from Time magazine in 1966. We assume the magazine meant catalog shopping, but the concept proved untrue. E-commerce sales were over $1 trillion in 2012. It seems that women are getting out of the house to do other things these days. So I really hope you enjoyed that video, and I'd love to know what you think of it, so please leave a comment below. I'm also going to link over to another video that you might enjoy, so just click on that thumbnail on the screen now, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we put out a new video 7 days a week, and you can also visit us online. Just go to TopTenzNet. Thanks for watching.